Hey everyone, Jamal here with Review Me, and today we're doing a special Q&A, a live Q&A with photography agent Isabel Scharenberg, and she is based in New York, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, she's based in New York. Currently, she's actually in the Hamptons for a shoot or a project, and holding it down there. But today, she's going to answer any and all questions you guys have about the photography business, her background, what she looks for, etc. So let's get into it. Isabel, feel free to share some background about yourself. How did you get into this business? And we'll move from there.
Okay. So I actually started 1998. So it's funny because I did my apprenticeship in a hotel. So I did my profession 3 years working in a hotel before I switched industries. And so I was asked from a friend who worked in advertising. She told me that there's this woman started this company representing photographers, and she wanted to expand, and if I would be interested in working there. And this is how everything started, basically, in 98. So, and I was in Munich, and I worked 10 years for this company. It was the biggest fashion photographer agency based in Munich, called Daniela Wagner. And I worked 7 years out of Munich. And then in 2006, she sent me to open the office in New York. So I worked there until the end of 2008, and then started to go on my own in around 2009. And since then, I have my own business.
Yeah, nice. And with your agency, I believe you're heavy into not just representing photographers, but also production and other facets. Talk about the range of things that you do and your skill sets and etc.
Right. So since I'm German, of course, I'm lucky to have quite some German clients coming to the US to do productions. So I don't only work with my photographers, but also with German catalog clients or other photographers. Can be in general European, Swiss clients, Austrian clients. And they also ask me for suggestions sometimes to recommend photographers who are based out of New York or Los Angeles or Miami. So we actually just recently did a production for a German magazine called Die Welt am Sonntag. It's the biggest German newspaper, and they have a beautiful supplement which is called Icon. And they sent us to Vancouver Island last week to produce a shoot there, which was actually with a Canadian photographer. So this is what I'm doing. I'm also suggest sometimes, it's more like, almost more like direction of art buying, to suggest illustrators or photographers to European clients for various projects. And and then I, of course, represent my photographers on the US market. And I have actually a collaboration partner in Munich. Her name is Christina Korb.
Oh, yeah.
And we share some photographers, or I also suggested her some photographers who do not have a German rep, who are based in New York or in the US. And so this is how we collaborate. Or if she has clients coming to the States, she asks me about references or referrals, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. It seems like you obviously rep your agents in the US, but you also act as kind of a consultant to European brands who want to kind of break in and work their way when they're doing projects here. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, cool. And so obviously when you started your new, and this is going to get into some of the questions that people will be asking, when you started your new agency, what did you look for in photographers, and how many photographers do you currently have now?
I think our current roster is around 10 artists, photographers, and nine photographers and one illustrator. I think when I started my company, I left out that I started with my best girlfriend from Germany, 2009, but we realized it didn't work out, so I had to redo everything. And then it was actually, I think, June 2009, I started my complete own venture. But what I was looking for was, like, I wanted to have like a photographer in every category, from like a still lifer, a car photographer, different levels of fashion, the beginners, like the starters, basically the one who are more already more established. And what was it? Yeah, so I wanted to have each category. I wanted to have one photographer. I was always looking more for the European style because this is more, I like that better. So, and since I'm European, I thought it makes sense. But I think on the way, on the road, I realized that it was hard being more like of a boutique agency to please that many fields. And also, like, after a while, I realized it's more, so it all went more through direction of fashion. I mean, we still have a still lifer and we have also a food photographer, but we mainly work in the fashion field.
Gotcha.
So, because this also my background, so it's kind of like automatically went then this road.
So what you just described seems like, and this actually, I guess we'll get into this first question that I see, but it seems like a lot of photographers actually start out like that too, wanting to shoot everything and then realizing that they should maybe focus in. So we have a question here, and the question is from Michael. He asks, when creating your online portfolio, is it best to separate your portfolio by women, beauty, creative, men, or just post them in a less structured way online? What are your thoughts on that? What do you like to see?
I think it's the best is like, or what clients want to see. They want to see everything like in like they don't want to click too many times, you know, through any kind of books. So they want to see everything as quickly as possible. But of course, it does need to make sense. So, I mean, I would rather suggest to have less portfolios, like let's say one fashion portfolio, and you can mix it with men and women and just use your strongest images. And then maybe do one beauty and one commercial or advertising commissioned, you know. I think it's always better to like, they have no patience anymore, those clients nowadays. So they want to see things quickly. So, and they don't want to get overwhelmed too. They only want to look which style that photographer has. And I think it gets confusing when they do too many things. And when they want to please everyone, as you say, like and they show everything they have, I think they should just show what they feel strongly about and what they also really want to pursue, you know, the direction they want to go. Because if they always try to please everyone and say, okay, I can do this beauty shoot and this, then at the end, you know, you will have like a potpourri of many images and not, you know, one red, you know, line, which, you know, guides to.
Yeah.
I explained
Is that also from your perspective? So when you look at potential photographers to refer or to represent, is that also what you like to see in portfolios? Simple couple categories?
Yeah. I think as more clear it becomes, sometimes photographers only have, you know, one portfolio where they mix everything in because it's all one look and it fits. I mean, if they have normally, of course, the personal work is slightly different to the commercial work. So I think it makes sense to separate it because when you do commercial work, sometimes it has to be much more lifestyle, much more smiley, much more happy. And your personal work is to show what, you know, how creative you are and what you really like and your strengths. And I think I would always suggest every photographer to really go for their own strengths, what they know they are good in and they wanted to do, and not just doing it because they were once an assistant to a big beauty photographer and think, well, I can do the same, you know. If it's not really what you want to do, you know, pushing yourself to do something which is not, you know, the industry is hard enough nowadays. So you should really do what you want to do, you know, and pursue this. And let's say you're a portrait photographer or like it's hard for documentary photographer, for example, a photojournalist. I think that's a very tough field. I love it. I really love it, but it's very hard to sell as an agent. I think you need to make up your mind if you want to be more an artist or like a commercial photographer. So you have to make your decision because as a photojournalist, I mean, it's a long road. And as we see as Sebastian Salgado, for example, I mean, he's now a very famous photographer, but he's been working on his career for like 30 years, 40 years. And now everyone says, yeah, of course, you know, he had luck, he was this. I mean, he was living a very simple life, you know, until he became who he is. And he always worked for his love, his passion, so I think that's the way you should go if you decide to become a photographer.
Cool, nice. So we got another question here. So when photographers contact you seeking representation, what are the things you don't like? What are the immediate red flags? And also, what makes you want to look into their work and potentially arrange a meeting or even answer their email?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's funny when I get this email saying, I work for Vogue Italy, I work for W Magazine, I work for American Vogue, and I've never heard this name. I've never, so you see a lot of names. So, I mean, we have to do a lot of research, and, we have to be always on top of who's in the magazines, who's the new upcoming talent, or, all of that. So I think if you once had an ad in a big magazine, that doesn't mean you worked for that magazine. So I would always try to stay as much true to the truth if possible. I think it's nice to add a picture to the email if you attach a couple of pictures. So it's easier. You don't have to click on the link. So you see immediately if you like that style or look, as if someone just tells me for which great magazines he worked, and then I have to click on the website, and then I'm kind of disappointed to realize, okay, it's, I think you should, just stay true. And of course, mention your biggest clients to get the attraction, But I think it's nice to add a picture, your style, so the agent knows immediately so what kind of look it is you're approaching.
And then what makes you, so obviously maybe besides the work, what makes you want to jump on somebody? So I guess probably a good example, what was the last person or two that you signed? How did they get in with you? What made you want to follow up with them and set up that meeting?
Okay, I mean, it's like, this is so, the last people I signed on is Hunter and Gatti, and I've been following their work for a long time. So I still know them while I was in Europe, actually. And so I really like what they do. They have their personal work. They also do their artistic part. And I think they have a very high potential. They know what they do. They have great skills in terms of lighting. They're good storytellers. They have a very, I like their aesthetic. So I think it's sometimes very hard to say, what do you like? What do you don't like? I mean, it's like seeing a picture and it kind of, moves you. It kind of, I think what usually drives me is if I can remember an image from a photographer, which kind of left like some emotions or something, something I do remember, like I think that's a strong image. And then I would want to meet that photographer and see what kind of personality he has or she, and see if it clicks and if it works, because it's a partnership. It's like kind of a marriage, right? So so it's not only the images which count. It's also, for me, it's more smaller, for me, it's a very personal thing too. If you click, if you have the same vision, if you're sympathetic, if you want to do this marriage together, because it's always, you cannot just think you have an agent and you lean back and the agent is doing all the work. It's a together, always, The photographer has to provide new work and do their job, so the agent can use those images and all the news, in order to promote them the right way.
Mm-hmm. So kind of summing that up, basically for you, you hate it when you get an email and somebody's bragging and then you get disappointed by seeing their work, or they didn't add a photo in the that's not the biggest no. I mean, I would look at the work if I, but I already know when someone writes all about, all these big magazines they were in, and I have never read their names in any of the magazines, that it's probably someone, and then I probably will not look at the email immediately. I will first do all my work things, because, you get so many emails every day. And then sometimes I feel bad not to get back to some of the photographers, but sometimes you get so overwhelmed, you get so many emails. So it's good sometimes too that they check in again and say,
did you get my email? And be a little bit persistent, you know, in reaching out, because they have to understand we get like not only photography emails, we get email from stylists, from hair and makeup, from other agents, you know, for hair and makeup styling, all kind of, you know, requests. So, and then we have our daily business, so we have to sell our artists. So we don't have time to just give everyone advice every day, you know, just because he's a friend of a friend, or so it's, so I don't want to sound unpolite then, you know, I like to give, you know, suggestions or whatever, but it's, yeah, it's all about timing.
Okay, yeah, so cool. So a couple other things that you mentioned prior. So you mentioned this notion of you prefer the European style when it comes to a lot of your fashion photographers. So talk about what that is. What's the differences between that European style and I guess more of a New York, US style? And then how does that translate to being in New York? So you're selling a style that's from, you know, Europe into New York clients. Is that helpful? How does that work?
You know, I think the European style, I would say, is probably a little bit more modern. What I mean was, you know, European style, I mean, nowadays, yeah. I mean, what I don't like on the American photography is this very lifestyle. This is something I just, you know, all the smiling and where everyone could have shot this, you know, like in a lifestyle situation. This is not so much my, I don't like that too much. So I like it a little bit more cool, modern, experimentative, experiment.
Close enough.
Would you say that? So strong, either strong lighting skills, something like more clear and strong image. You know, I love movement a lot. It can be in studio or on location. I like when the photographer is not only shooting the girl, like being like, you know, in a nice pose, like something which was a little bit more energy. That's what I like, you know, when you can tell, okay, there was the model, you know, got a great direction from the photographer, and there's like some.
Yeah, and then how does that then translate to clients? So you like one thing and don't like lifestyle, but obviously the U.S. market per se does like a lot of lifestyle, but they obviously, of course, like a lot of fashion too, because it's New York, you know, one of the capitals. Right. So how does that translate?
I think people always want to see new things. They're interested in new looks, and they're constantly looking for new ideas. And if you have a photographer who's very creative and has great ideas, which the guys, I hope like the guys I picked have. So I think they can bring a lot to the table and help the client to have a much nicer aesthetic and get much more attention, you know, for their brands, because everything looks so much the same nowadays, you know. So you need to stick out as a client, you know, with your fashion brand. You need to be a little bit more experimentative and do new things, you know, and not do what everyone does, you know. Yeah. So.
And then talk about, is there a kind of level? So you mentioned before with your last signing that you had been following their work for a while. What other elements kind of pop into your head? Is it because, like you said before, you've seen them in maybe other magazines, or did you see them on social media? Or did you see their client work? Like, what other things jump out at you besides the quality of their work to get you, you know, wanting to look at them as a photographer? Social media accounts, clients. Yeah.
I'm not, you know, I know social media nowadays is very, very important, but I mean, that was not the first thing I would look at, you know. It's more, I think it's a very personal, you know, it's a very personal decision. I can't even really explain you. I can just tell you, I like it. I know I can sell it. Let's put it that way. So you have to love something in order to sell it. If you just like the person because it's a very nice person and you don't like their work, then you won't be, so how can you sell their work, you know? So that's basically, I can only sell what I like and love, you know. So, and this is how I pick, you know, my artists. So it's a bit hard to explain, right? But I also don't want to add too much people to my roster, because I don't want to disappoint anyone, because you know, you need time for every artist, to focus on every artist, and the more photographers you take on, some will be left out, and I think that's not fair towards the photographer, not fair towards me, because I know I will never be able to spend enough time on all of them, and this is why I rather want to keep it smaller than have too many. And just, I mean, there's other agents, they probably take on a lot of photographers, and if this photographer won't be able to do the shoot, they can bring in one of their, you know, young and upcoming talents or so. But I believe more like, I don't want to have too much competition in my roster. So I really want to go, okay, those clients are, you know, I will approach those clients with this photographer, those clients with this. And so, you know, so everyone has their, you know, well, you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, everyone
has their own personal style and taste. But yeah, it seems like for you, it's really about, if you really love it and think you can sell it, then you will look into it further. Weighing, of course, how much people are on your roster now and the different styles, and making sure that you can handle the workload. Yeah,
exactly. And sometimes, you know, it's all about, you know, sometimes it's the right timing and you get a job immediately for an artist, and sometimes it's a lot of work and it takes time, you know. And I'm usually not the person who gives up on a photographer after 3 months if it's not immediately picking up, you know. So I rather put my time and, you know, and then try to build it and see how we can make it work, you know.
Yeah.
If I commit to an artist, so, you know, I'm not someone who's like changing photographers quickly when I feel it's more like of a tougher road to go, you know.
Yeah.
As long as I believe in them and they believe in me, of course. So
yeah,
it's always a together. Yeah.
So speaking of kind of selling your artists to people, what are the things that you do as an agent to help your photographers out? What are some of those things? Is it emailing people, newsletters? What, you know?
You know, I mean, we do a lot of research first to see who really would fit to which client, because for me, it's always important to sell the client the right product and not just try to sell someone, because I want the client to come back, to be happy, and to say, you sold me the right artist. That's one, you know, I want to have a long-term relation with those clients. So what we do is usually, I mean, we make a list of clients we think would be good fit from the look and style. And yeah, then I reach out via phone, via email. I try to schedule meetings. I also travel sometimes to wherever I need to travel in order to meet the right people. And then we just as when I get a good feedback, of course, you just have to keep on sending them updates and be on top of it and not let this slip away, you know. If you get an interest once, you know, you have to, you know, to keep on giving them updates, meetings, calls, all of that.
And then now that there are obviously more digital communication tools, there are more ways I guess there's more competition in the industry in terms of everybody now thinking they're a photographer. What has become more difficult in terms of selling your photographers and just photographers in general getting work? What are some of the like big roadblocks that have come up over the last few years because of the changes?
I mean, I think like, you know, like a big problem is that many clients do not care about quality so much anymore. It's a lot about quantity. It's a lot of e-commerce, which has already a light setup. I mean, basically the photographer just goes there and pushes a click. It's not, you know, it's all set up. All those e-commerce studios, they have all their guidelines. So reality is everyone can shoot that. So in order to get in there, you really need a personal, you know, connection with one of the art buyers or art producers there to get your photographers in. So that became a bit more challenging, I think. It's also budgets due to digital photography. Budgets go down a lot. This is why they don't care about quality so much anymore. I think it's important to build, you know, like a strong personal relation with your clients, in order, you know, to get around this whole like digital and emailing. So it's important that you know the right people, and keep in touch with them and have lunch with them and all the things you have to do to keep your good relation. And I think it's also great nowadays if you do like some more outstanding mailings and not just an email blaster or a postcard. I mean, I have to say there's actually not so many postcards are sent out anymore. Maybe you can also send a very nice postcard which someone would put on a wall, you know, a nice picture. But I think you have to be a little bit more creative in terms of trying to approach clients. It's not only an email blast. That's not what's gonna make you work, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so obviously those are some of the kind of the issues. What are some of the opportunities that you see in the current environment for photography, if there are any? Like, you know, are people shooting book covers now? There's more music album covers or more magazines?
No, I mean, there's, of course, for social media, you know, social media is a very, very big, big market, you know, and there's a lot of companies, everyone always needs content. So that's always important. So that's something to look into, I think. So just for, especially for young, you know, upcoming photographers. I also think it's good for upcoming photographers to shoot e-commerce, just to get used to shoot a high amount of pictures, to get comfortable with it, to learn how to guide a model. You know, I think that's good things for upcoming photographers. So, gosh, sorry. Did I miss out on something?
Well, yeah, no, just if you have any other ideas in terms of where you think there.
I mean, social media is, you know, you can start, a lot of companies now go directly through photographers and ask them if they can do a package for them, and you can offer them 50 images for a certain amount, and they can send you products. I mean, there's a lot of new things you can do. I mean, it's challenging, but it's interesting. I mean, everyone constantly will need content, you know? So, and this is the new thing to you know, reach out to clients who are in charge of this whole content, social media content, you know? And also I think everyone is happy about getting new ideas, because you have the feeling the ideas, everything's repeating. So if you're a very creative, photographer or have great ideas, you know, nowadays you can pitch anything. There's so many opportunities nowadays, you know. Also, there's a lot of companies, they do events. I mean, they started now doing a lot of live illustration. So our illustrator works a lot on live events, doing like 2-3 hour events where she's drawing, sketching quickly, you know, customers. And I think, you can do you can come up with similar ideas in terms of photography, you know, to do selfies for them, or to do, you know, like there's a lot you can be creative with and offer new kind of services, you know, new style and new.
Yeah, it definitely seems like you have to be creative, but there are
absolutely
out there for photographers. You just have to, you know, go off the beaten path. So probably a few more questions. I don't see anything from the crowd as of yet, but where do you see motion in the future of photography? Just for yourself, are you seeing more and more people asking for video, motion, animated GIFs, cinemagraphs, etc.? What are you seeing there?
I think animated GIFs is a great thing. But it will probably, it's going to be, it started already, and I think it's cute because something animated is also something which catches your eye a little bit more. I think in terms of motion, I mean, the motion thing since a couple of years already, like it was always, can the photographer also do the motion? I think not every photographer is good in that. I don't think every photographer can tell a story. I think there are some photographers they definitely have the skills and they can do it. But I think it will still be a little bit more separated. I mean, I think they learned over the past years that if they really want to do a big motion part, a big brand video or something, they probably will go with a director than with a photographer. And I think it's smart. Or you can use the photographer just for the looks, but you should have someone else do the storyboard and filming it. Because most of the photographers know how to take a nice picture, but they would like film the same situation over and over again, and then you don't have anything to edit. So I had the experience in the past. So I think not everyone is good with it, but I think it comes more and more and more. Every client is asking for those videos now for their websites. So it's a big market too. And that's also exciting. So if this is something, what a photographer likes to do as well, telling stories, and I think they could definitely do it. And it's a big market, I think, as of now.
Cool. So I guess as a last question, being that you have experience in both New York and Europe, what are the different things that people should try to do to gain success in either or market? We actually have somebody who I know is based watching in New York, and we have somebody actually who's based in London watching right now. What are some of the different things people should do for each one? How are they different?
You mean the markets? How the markets are different?
Europe, London versus US, New York, LA.
I don't think the markets are too different. I think you always have to do the same things, build relations, do your networking part, or have your agent do the network. If you have an agent, your agent will take part of the networking part. And just do what you love and stick true to your, to yourself. And then I think things will come, and sometimes they take time, and just in the meantime, be creative and come up with some new ideas, which you can pitch, because everyone is like thankful for new ideas. I mean, just be careful no one steals your ideas, but any good idea will be stolen no matter what, One starts with a great idea and everyone will kind of follow. Which is also, I mean, that's there's a lot of competition. Just stick to what you really like to do, I think. And if you shoot fashion, but you hate it, but you think you can make money with it, you won't be successful because it's not what you love to do. So that's my advice.
Cool. No, thanks so much, Isabel. This has been great, a nice, condensed, but very informative take. Obviously, I like that, your background, you have the European side of things, but also you're based in New York, so it definitely is an interesting vibe, which is cool. So people watching, feel free to follow up and view this, view the replay. It should be available right as we press stop. Also, Isabel's actually based in New York, as I mentioned. She's also on Review Me, so you can reach out via that platform if you want to follow up with her for further questions and things like that. So, all right, this has been a great session with Isabel Scharenberg. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you. Have a great week.
All right, take it easy.
Bye. Bye.